Hi, and welcome everybody to today's episode with Naomi Lerman. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a big pleasure to be here.
Awesome. I am going to do what I always do, which is read your bio, and then people have a little bit of understanding who you are. And then we're going to dive into our conversation. Naomi Lerman is a certified somatic trauma informed coach and founder of Victory Dance Coaching and the Victory Dance Method. A survivor and performer, she helps women heal from sexual trauma without reliving the past, connecting mind, body, and soul to build safety, joy, and self trust. Through coaching, movement, and practical daily tools, Naomi guides clients to reclaim their voice, design aligned lives, and celebrate bold, embodied freedom. That sounds fantastic. So, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to hear that read out loud. You know, sometimes we need a reminder of our own bios.
Like, so, these days the word trauma gets thrown around like it's, hot potatoes, sliced bread, whatever. So, I want to just ask, what is actually a trauma informed coach?
Great question. I know for a lot of people, it seems sort of like an amorphous job, an amorphous thing. So a trauma-informed coach, basically I was trained to work with clients, always coming from the understanding that they've experienced some level of trauma. So a lot of times when people think about trauma, like you said, it's a word that's like thrown around, like let's brush our teeth. Everyone has trauma. But it could be anything from what some people call big T trauma, which I really draw away from that, but meaning war, rape, abuse, divorce, those types of things. And of course, there's like varied levels of what one might call big T trauma. But there's also what some people call small T trauma, which it could be extremely at the same level of trauma for some people in the way that they hold it. And that could mean something like when you were a kid and you worked really hard on an art project and your parents were like, wow, that sucks. And you walked away with this feeling of, I suck, anything I do sucks, I'm just a terrible human. And on the surface, that looks like something small that you experience, but that might be something that you're carrying your entire life and holding onto and reacting from. So we kind of, as a trauma-informed coach, we come to be with every client with the headspace that you've experienced some level of trauma and there's no moral value to it. It's just a lens that we're working from. And then how it works on a practical level, I've been trained to use, I'm informed to use like family systems and attachment theory and the general philosophical and psychological ways of looking at a human, but it's really coming from an informed lens, meaning I'm not going to sit down with someone and do IFS parts work with them. I'm not certified to do that. I would never assume that I know that, but it's more working from a place where I'm trained in all these areas and I have these available tools. And then on a practical level, when I'm sitting with a client, it allows me to really see them, to understand them on a holistic level, and to really try to get to know them, because just like every human is unique, we're all born and it's extremely unique on all DNA biological levels. I suppose not identical twins, but even in that case, we do process information differently. So that means that your healing is going to be completely and utterly unique. There's no tick the boxes. There's no set rules and regulations. I have a framework I work from, but I really get to know the person that is sitting in front of me in the moment where they're at. And then we work through different concepts and tools. So it starts with mindset work. That's how I sort of start working with my clients, because if you have so much noise and all of these stories are going on in your head, it's really hard to open up any work in the body or the soul. So we start in the mind, and then we move to, and using the tools that are out there, but really refining them for the individual person. And then we move into body work, which could be one side, it's nutritional work. Like a lot of times people come to me being like, wow, I'm exhausted and I feel like I can't do any of the healing work I need to do. And I'll ask them, well, what did you eat today? And they're like, oh, I really wasn't hungry and all I ate was like an apple. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, your body already is in a state of trauma, feeling like it's being chased by a lion. And then you're reinforcing that by eating an apple. And then you're like pushing so hard on yourself because you're exhausted and can't do the work, right? So the beauty of this system is that we nourish the body with the goal of energy, with the goal of being able to do the mental health work we want to do, with the goal of living a joyful, beautiful, magical life. So there's no shame or blame on nutrition or what's the right way to eat. It's what works for you. What kind of food can we fill your body with, and water we can fill your body with, in order to allow you to become this person, this moving along in your healing journey that you want for yourself. And then we also do movement activities and exercises, whether that's somatic work, which, I'm trained in that, but it's not like always my go-to tool. Some people feel very uncomfortable with it. I might integrate somatics into the work that we do, but it's not like, okay, now we're going to sit down and do somatic work, but it might also look like integrating an exercise routine, whether that's like, for me, I love lifting heavy weights. For some people, it could be yoga. For some people, you could want to be a sumo wrestler. It really doesn't matter. That's not the point. It's like finding something that makes you feel good, joyful, and moves your body. And in the end, we start working on soul work, which means like the way that I come at it, and I work with people from all different cultures and all different backgrounds. And the one piece that we sort of have to be on the same playing field is that we believe, whomever I'm working with believes that there's a higher source, a higher power, some sort of universal something, energetics. And so what we talk about is that inside of us, there's a piece of that. We were born with that, and it's there no matter what. And right now it might look like a tiny little flicker. And the goal is to grow that. And that act of growing that allows us to understand that what our inner voice is. How does that sound? How can that help protect us? Maybe we actually have all the answers, and we don't need to look outwards, and we don't need to be fixed, because that light is in there. And as it grows, it grows that sense of safety. So when I say I'm a trauma-informed coach, that's what it means for me. And if you might speak to, Joe Schmo next door to me, they might answer that question very, very differently. And I think that's the beauty of coaching, but also can be the downfall of coaching. You have to find your coach and someone that you feel comfortable with. It is, I know, and it's an industry that people are uncomfortable with. But for me, that's the answer personally. That's what trauma-informed coaching means to me.
That's a great explanation. So thank you. The time to do it. Let's take a quick break. I want to remind you that if you're interested in learning more about neuro-emotional coaching or kinesiology, if you would like to have a taste, find out what it could do for you or your business, your family, please look at the show notes. There's a link for a 30-minute free introductory meeting, and we can explore it. You can look at what is holding you back, what are your dreams, what is it that you always wanted to achieve. Don't be shy, sign up. Now, let's get back to the show. I have so many questions now. So first of all, I think it's always a little touchy to talk about the big T and the little t.
Oh, I hate it. It makes me so sad and uncomfortable.
Well, and really, if you look at intergenerational trauma, and we all have been exposed or experienced some sort of trauma. How do you define it? Like, is there something on your intake form or something where you ask people, hey, what have been the traumatic moments in your life, or how do you even broach that subject? I mean, I can't imagine when people come to you and say, oh, hey, by the way, I've been sexually abused. I mean,
that's not usually how it happens. Sometimes it does. I've gotten emails where a person's been like, I've been married 50 years and I've never told this to anybody, but I've seen the work that you're doing on social media and I want to share this with you. That actually has happened. But oftentimes it's someone that's really struggling. They're referred by someone else or referred by a therapist. And they'll come to me knowing that something happened to them in their life. I often call it adversity, because adversity is a much more comfortable word than trauma. And it's sort of a way in. But also, I should mention that there are no rules in the sense that we don't unpack the trauma. Like, I'm not trained to sit and do exposure therapy with someone or sit and train to do EMDR. Do you know what I mean? So I could work with a person for 6 months and never actually know every last detail about the trauma they experienced. And at the end of the day, the way that I work, it's not actually, it's very important what you experience, because for you, it's very important. But in order to do this work and to unlock these things in ourselves, I have experienced, this comes from a very personal place. Like, I tried that route. I tried the EMDR. I tried the trauma therapy. I was raped by a massage therapist, and I had in Israel, and I took him to court, and he went to jail. Thank
Oh my
God.
God.
It was a horrifying
Wow.
story in that hundreds of women he had hurt. They sent in a undercover police officer to try and catch him.
Oh my
No one
God.
could catch him. And unfortunately for him and for me, I was his worst case. But for him, because I am not a person to sit back and not speak up, it's something that I've had as a gift. I experienced abuse in my life and other things, and so I right away I was 18 and I spoke to my parents, and they said, if you want to go to the police, let's go. And I went through it, and it was a whole thing. I was a tourist here in Israel when it
Oh my
happened.
God.
Yeah. So I was assigned someone through the court, and we did trauma work. Like I've done all the digging, deeping thingies that one can do in like the traditional process of therapeutic work. And none of it worked. It worked on the surface.
Okay.
It allowed me to live a life. It allowed me to get married. It allowed me to get a master's degree and to literally live an outward, very beautiful, fortunate life. And on the inside, I felt lost and hopeless, and that I will never feel whole again, and my outsides will never match my insides. And I just had sort of accepted that. And like I was not willing. There was a piece of me, thank God, that was not willing to accept that. It was like, no, I want more for myself. I was put on this earth for a reason, and I'm not going to sit in this pain for the rest of my life. I did nothing wrong. I don't deserve it.
Right.
And my way in the end, was doing this type of work of sort of out of the box, like using visualizations, treating my body like the holy vessel it is, and reminding myself that if I do hard things like holding a 6-minute plank or deadlifting my weight, I can actually also do hard mental things. And I was able to make that connection that way, doing it that way. And I've always been a creative thinker, and I've always been someone that has sort of lived outside the box. Like from very early age, I thought I was an alien put on this planet, and that it was a mistake, and that somehow some very stupid universal being had like made a mistake when I was born, and that I don't know what he was thinking, or she was thinking, or they were thinking. It doesn't really matter. I was just didn't think that I was put here for any good reason. And so when the rape happened, it just sort of underlined that point. It was like, yeah, of course this happened to me, of all people, of course,
Evidence.
right?
You got evidence now.
Right, now I have evidence. I had been in an abusive relationship prior to the rape. I was in an abusive romantic relationship after I was bullied very badly as a kid, and all of this just underlined with evidence for the fact that some very unfortunate person in the sky had made a very terrible mistake when I was born.
Wow.
And all the therapy in the world, and all the EMDR, and the drama therapy, and all the things, the medication, I was on 10 plus psychiatric medications. No one really asked me about my trauma, but they diagnosed me with bipolar 2. And that looked like being on 10 plus medications, 2 psychiatric ward stays, and still feeling like a hopeless human living this beautiful life. Like I'm a performer. I was a professional singer, dancer, and actress. I still am to a certain degree, and I have big dreams for myself still in that area. That's not a door I've closed. And I had a husband, and I had romantic relationships, and I was outgoing, and I was a synchronized swimmer on a national level. Like I was a goer and a doer and a thinker and a believer on the outside. And then on this inside, it was like, wow, everything that's happened to me basically reminds me that I was a mistake.
Right.
So, but doing this incredible out of the box work, which like makes sense because of who I was, and it's not for everyone, it's not, and that's okay. It's not for everyone, but for those of us that like have tried everything, quote unquote, because like no one's tried everything, but it's this sort of way of doing things that looks at ourselves and looks at our trauma and looks at our life and who we are from a much more whole place, and from a much more like, how can I do this work so it's not painful? How can I put habits into my life, like drinking 2 liters a day, which like, okay, yeah, it's a little difficult, but like that's much less complicated than digging into my trauma, And so by doing that habit actively for a month, I actually am someone that says I'm going to do something and sticks to it. I'm someone that takes care of myself, and it starts to redefine labels and to to stop reminding myself that, wow, I'm a mistake on this planet. No, I actually can take care of myself. And my inner voice does have a say in things. And I do have a choice in what happens to me in my life. And things don't just happen to me. I can make a choice. And now that's such a gift that I love to give other people, because I went through so many years of my life saying out loud, like, oh, I have to because I don't have a choice. And my husband's like so opposite from that. And we're literally like, if you wanted two opposite humans to get married, we found each other, believe you me. And I remember one day I got into this argument with him because my parents had said, oh, we need you to do this. I think they were here visiting us or something along those lines. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I have to do it. And it didn't make sense. I literally had to flip myself upside down and backwards in order to do it. But like, well, I don't have a choice. And I told my husband, he was like, no, by not making a choice, you're still making a choice. It's all a choice. And I was like, what? Really? Excuse me? It was like, wow, my mind is blown. And so that's the gift that like I had to go through it the painful way. And my gift to others and my hope is that I can give this the hard way, but not the painful way. Because it's going to be hard, no matter what. It's going to be hard. It's just, that's the nature of it. But we can go into it from a much more joyful, beautiful, magical place that just doesn't really have to have friction and pain. And when there is friction and pain, it's like, okay, wait a minute, we're doing something wrong, which does happen sometimes with clients. Like I'll recommend they implement a tool and they'll come back to me and they'll be like, yeah, that was terrible. Like, why did you make me do that? And I'm like, okay, so then we did something wrong. What can we learn from this? What happened after? What did it feel like? What thoughts came up? Where was it in your body? How were you able to come out of it, et cetera, et cetera? And then from there, we'll figure out what a less painful version would be. Because like, as you know, there's billions of tools out there, billions and billions and billions of tools. Some work, some don't, some are great, some aren't, some are just somewhere in the middle. And it's finding the way in for each individual person and remembering again and again and again that like eating healthy doesn't have to be painful. Doing healing work doesn't have to be painful. Like the fact that you have this trauma is not a life sentence. And all of that is something that for me, it's like, that's my message that I just want to like scream out on the top of rooftops, like, especially living in Israel these past 2.5 years. Like I was thinking yesterday, I have this intense fear for the day after, the day the war is done, the day after. What is that going to look like for people? How is that going to feel like? We had a glimpse of that after the Iran war, where we went to sleep in a state of war and we woke up out of a state of war. And then all of a sudden we had to go back to school and go to the grocery store and do all the things that one does.
Right.
And all of a sudden we're not supposed to feel fear. We're not supposed to have anger, you know? It's interesting. I had this experience with a neighbor, very, very Israeli, doesn't speak a word of English. And I love her. She's such a beautiful human. And we were standing at the elevator and I said to her, that was really scary. What we just went through was really scary. It was very frightening. And she was like, yeah, you're right. It was. And I was like, thank you. I am so tired of people walking around pretending that wasn't scary or saying things to me to make me like weird comments that sort of jab me and make me feel strange for having been scared. I didn't go around telling people I was scared. It felt like a good moment, but I had experiences where it was like a neighbor was like, oh, well, didn't you go back to Chutz La'aretz? Like, didn't you go back to outside of Israel? And I was like, no, I lived through this. It was horrible. And so like this neighbor, I just felt so seen. And she was like, honestly, anyone that tells you that wasn't horrifyingly frightening is not telling the truth.
Yeah.
And so that's my fear after the day after the war ends, in that like we need to all be with each other. And it's okay to feel scared and sad and angry and resentful and like all the things. And how can we do that on a national level? To me, is like frightening a little bit.
It is frightening. So you said a lot, and I want to comment for a moment. So first of all, I really appreciate you sharing your story. It's a vulnerable thing to share. And I think it's important that people hear it. So I appreciate it because that's real. That shit happens. It happens all the time.
Can I
And I'm
speak to that quickly as to why I do that? Because I think
no,
it's
no,
important.
I am, I'm sorry that you went through that, because
Of course.
that's a
I appreciate it.
horrible thing to go through.
I appreciate it. It was a decision. It was a conscious decision to start sharing that piece of myself. Um, and this is sort of the metric that I use. I think about how many women I help by talking about it,
Yeah,
by being vulnerable, and by sharing the truth. Because I think the metric is the statistic is 1 in 5 women have been sexually assaulted or abused, and that's really frightening. That's like a very high number of people,
it's
women. I don't know what the metric for men is actually. I think that's just
one in three.
it's 1 in 3. Yeah. So for me, I picture all the women I'll help by being open about this and vulnerable and sharing. And then on the other side, I picture all the people that are made uncomfortable, feel bad, feel guilty, blame, shame, feel like I'm sharing too much or whatever it is. And for me, there's no question that the women that hear my story and finally feel heard and seen and validated, for me, it's worth it. It's so important to me. So I appreciate you saying that, and it was very much a conscious decision, and it's been worth it. Even though for sure there's people that it makes them uncomfortable or they don't know what to say or whatever it is, but it's who I am. It's a piece of me. It happened to me, but it's not me. It's a part of my story, and
No,
so yeah.
no, it's important, and it's important that you share details about it.
Yeah.
It's like, I also was sexually abused as a child,
Oh, wow.
and I didn't, I would share about it, but then it's like it happened in the family. It actually happened with my father. So then it's like, oh, my father's still alive, and my mother, and all the implication that it has on the family. But at some point, I was just, yeah, and the implication that it had when I grew up as a child, and that they wanted to put me in special ed class because they thought I was stupid, and meanwhile it was all about the trauma, and that we share about medication and psychiatric stays and all the kind of things that people say, well, am I just crazy? And they don't connect the dots. That it's so important that it's something that happened to us, but it doesn't define us. And
Yeah.
and then at some point, to look even to see what are the lessons here. If you have a spiritual practice, or you look it at some point, from that point of view as well, then to sort of really understand all of it. So
Yeah. I think also there's such a stigma. Like even when I opened my coaching practice and I hired a bookkeeper and I explained to her she asked me like, what are you doing? And I told her, and she was like, oh, like anyone has sexual trauma, like they couldn't afford something like you. Like it would have to be free. And I was like, lady,
yeah,
everyone from like
lady.
presidents of countries, CEOs of companies, to me, to very successful humans, like people just have this idea. And I think to take that stigma away is something that allows people to heal and allows people to just know that it happened, and it doesn't mean anything about them, and it doesn't mean they're a poor homeless person that just needs help to be fixed. Like I think it's really, that's part of the piece why I share it, that we can be empowered and have this story. And I really appreciate you being vulnerable with me. That's not easy, and it's particularly hard when it's a family member. And it's really incredible that you talk about it, because there are so many women come to me with the story that it was their father or their older brother or their someone very close, and to have people out there that say this happened to me, but it's not the end of my story, it's just a chapter or a sentence. I think there's so much value in that. So thank you for also being vulnerable and sharing that with me.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Of course.
Yeah, we need to talk about it, because it's part of the reality. And I was talking, just a little bit of talking, but I was talking about discrimination the other day, and people they say, well, I can't hang around these kind of people because they've done things that are traumatizing. I said, do you know how many women that have been raped or abused, and like 40%, 35, 40%. And they can't just say, I can't hang around that group anymore. So it's like, um, they can't walk away from the guys. It's not always, of course, guys. Women have also
Right.
been,
Yeah, of course.
raped by other women, even though it happens much less. But so it's like, okay, then where do I go? So it's important. And one of the things I said recently is like, until we really embrace that, the trauma, there won't be world peace until we really understand that we're all part of it, and that we're just reliving our trauma in various ways. Whether that's like you talking about not eating and not taking care of our bodies, and not doing what's good for us, or putting ourselves, reliving the trauma over and over. I think it's going to be hard for us to come together as human species.
Yeah. I think also like a lot of the deep work that I do with my clients is understanding that it doesn't matter where you are, who you're with, who's surrounding you. It's about creating a sense of internal safety, and in knowing that if I get a feeling that something's wrong, I can protect myself. Nothing is stopping me from being protected. And so, yeah, like all day long, you could try and separate yourself from the people that have traumatized you, the things, the environments, or whatever it is, but it ends up leaving you living a very, very small life. And I just think that's really sad and almost unnecessary. And if we can know that, like we said, we have a choice, and that we can protect ourselves, and that we can listen to our inner voice, and it is meaningful. And I think that's the work. That's the deepest, most important work. Because then at the end of the day, like even when I moved to Israel, officially I made Aliyah, I happened to speak to the lawyer that had represented me in my case. And she said to me, "Oh, I never thought you would come back to Israel.
Wow.
I thought you would come away just being like, nope, not interested, never again." And for me, honestly, that wasn't a piece. Like I do have a story around why I made Aliyah and how long it took and everything, but it was more like I was on 10 plus medications. I had this mental health safety net. I had my family, and I just thought, I don't have the power to do this on my own in a country where it's not my first language, etc. That was more, it wasn't like, oh, I never want to go back to that country. The country is bad. The country caused this. I always say to people, like, people are people. It doesn't matter what you look like. Like, you and I look very different. Like a guy could be wearing a black hat, a shtreimel with payas, or, a woman could be in a bikini and whatever. And it doesn't really mean anything about them. There are good people, there are bad people, they're all people in between. And it's all a costume on the outside. It's all, and so just to label a country bad because something happened to me there, for me, that personally never made sense. And so it's very important to me to try and to open up about that so that people can see that for themselves, that at the end of the day, what happens externally to you really has nothing to do with you. And it's the internal work and the understanding and the internal safety that we can create for ourselves, that like you could walk into a jungle and still be okay, or at least have that knowing, that internal peace, and knowing that I can make decisions and choices, and that can't be taken away from me no matter what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And my intuition and my, that my inner voice that guides me, that tells me this is safe or this isn't safe.
Yeah.
That is all coming from me inside. So
yeah,
right on, 100%. So we could be talking for a long time, I think. And I wanted to ask you if there's a tip that you can, or a tool that you can leave our listeners with.
Yes. Okay. 100%. So speaking about creating a sense of safety for yourself, internal safety, a lot of that work is more deeper work, takes longer, to build that inner voice and that inner sense, etc. But I do have a tool that I like to use. It's sort of I feel weird saying it's like a quick fix tool. It's like something you can really put into place and grow and build as a practice, but it's something that you don't have to do a lot of inner work to get to. What I do is I do this myself also, so I'll speak in the first person. So
Okay.
What I do is I've created an energetic field around myself that's sort of like a safety bubble. And inside my little safety bubble, it's everything from like there's music playing, there's sense, there's feeling, there's smell, there's things in my bubble with me. And I've created this space for myself that no matter what environment I go into, either I go into the environment with visualizing it before I even enter, depending, say it's a difficult situation. Like I actually had to go back into a courtroom in Israel, and that was really, really complicated for me. It was due to a traffic accident, and it was totally fine and disconnected, but it brought up a lot, right? So I went into the courthouse wearing this bubble that I created for myself with colors and smells and sounds and tastes. But also, sometimes you're in a conversation and that feelings, that rubbed feeling, the trauma starts to come up. You might start having disconnected thoughts or whatever it is. You can just put that bubble on you, and it's part of your mental health toolkit that you can activate in a situation where you feel necessary. So in order for it to really become part of your practice, to become a tool for you, it's really important to remember to sit with yourself and create this bubble. Name it, give it everything, like really as fine details as you can. And so then when you're put in a situation where you need to activate it, it's already there. So even like creating a habit for yourself where, when I wake up, right when I open my eyes in the morning, I imagine this bubble. And before I go to sleep, I imagine this bubble. So then your brain already knows it's there and you can activate it in a moment that you find it necessary to use. So that's sort of a tool that I find really, really helpful.
Awesome. Fantastic. That's a great tool.
Thank
Awesome
you.
tool. Yes.
I like the fact that it's free and you could take it anywhere. That's also for me. Like you don't need anything plugged in, no apps, no nothing. You always have it with you.
That's good. No, that's good. That's a great tool. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
How can people find you? We're going to put it in the show notes, but maybe share the website with us so that it makes it easier for people.
Yeah, of course. So you'll find me on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
Naomi Lerman, VDC, Victory Dance Coaching.
Okay.
And you can also reach out to me by email at victorydancecoaching@gmail.com. And
Awesome.
I'm always available through those aspects.
Thank you. I wanted to ask this earlier, and this is not a smooth transition, but
It's fine.
what is your vision for yourself? Because you said you left that door open with dancing and singing and performing. What's your dream vision that you have?
So on one hand, I have a dream for the coaching that I do, the coaching practice. And I do have like a business plan, et cetera, which it's exciting and incredible. And I love it. But I think what you're asking more about is this other piece. I dream about this as a movement, like a world movement, healing trauma from a joyful place, from a place of love and beauty and hope and dreaming. And in the next few years, hopefully it will happen quite soon, who knows, I dream of creating a whole music performance, like an extravaganza, like think like Coldplay concert. I don't know if you've ever been to a Coldplay concert, you've seen a Coldplay concert, but because I'm a songwriter also, so I'm gonna write the music. There's gonna be dancers, there's gonna be lights, it's gonna be like a whole experience, healing experience. And my current dream, and once I do that, we'll have more, is to sell at the amphitheater in Caesarea. And I dream the event will happen at sunset. So we'll be watching the sunset all together as we experience this whole healing movement all together. So that's my dream. And that's my way to intertwine the performing and the music and the movement and all of that, and making it accessible for people where they hear the word trauma, but they might be willing to go to a concert and just feel and be with other women that want to experience that.
That's fantastic. I love it.
Yay.
I'm coming.
You are invited. Your ticket's in the mail. That's how to manifest it, right?
Yeah. Going to see myself. Awesome. That's fantastic. So, yay.
Yeah.
I think it's time for us to wrap up, even though, like I said, we can talk forever. Anything you want to leave our listeners, viewers with today?
I think the biggest takeaway is that I would love to give over is that whatever you're experiencing in this moment it's okay and it's normal, and nothing that's happened to you or is happening to you is undoable, unmanageable. And although it might feel completely unmanageable and like you're suffering right now, having that knowing that it's okay and that you're going to be okay. And that sense of hope that maybe by listening to this conversation, I'm hoping you're walking away with that there's hope and there's people that have walked through the fire just like you and have found a way in a way that maybe you haven't yet found. And there's never a point where you should say to yourself that I'm done, that I can't go on anymore. Because even though it's so painful in this moment, I promise you, you were put here on this planet for a reason. There are no mistakes. There are no mistakes. There really aren't. And I learned that very deeply and personally. And so if you can come away from this conversation knowing that there is a whole plan out there for you, and even though it's terribly painful right now, that is actually part of your story, and it's okay. It is okay.
Thank you. Amen.
Right?
Yeah,
Right?
right.
So it's like so important. No one ever said that to me. No one ever told me I was okay. No one ever told me that what I was experiencing was normal. I was just told that everything, I was abnormal, that something was wrong with me, that I was making this happen to me. I had people tell me that, oh, you attract bad energy, you attract bad people. No, I don't. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just what happened, you know?
No, there's nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you guys listening out there.
So
And
powerful.
right now, I think it's very important to keep telling yourself that. So that's very important that you address this, because it's like the triggers are everywhere. It's like
Yeah.
I said I got connected with somebody that I haven't talked to in 20 some years. As a matter of fact, she just has a book out, and we're going to try to do a book event when I go to the States. And it's like people, I've told her, it's like I'm experiencing things and triggers that I haven't in like 30 years, and so it's like, and this is exactly what I tell myself. It's okay. This is just another layer, or you have an opportunity to just like clean up something else. And it's like, it's okay. It's normal to have these experiences, and to keep telling ourselves, and to keep telling yourself that, because that is the beginning of acceptance, and that actually allows for the process to take place, and so that you can create something else for yourself. So yes, it is okay. We are okay.
Also remembering that I actually heard this from somebody else, but what I call the unraveling, like that point before the growth, is actually the most painful point. And you might break at that point, which is so sad, because your dream is literally around the corner. That's the most painful point, because before you didn't have the awareness, but now you have the awareness and you're feeling it. You're feeling the constriction.
Right.
If you can get through that and realize the pain is actually normal, even if you don't want to like it, you don't have to like it, but like realize that this is actually a good sign, even though that sounds psychotic perhaps, but this is actually a good sign, because if you're in this much pain, then the growth is actually right around the corner. You don't have to wait much longer.
True.
Yeah.
Naomi, thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate the time that you spend with us, and I see you in Casaria, so that's all I have to say.
I'll see you there.
Just like make it happen. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Hi, thank you for listening to today's podcast with Naomi, and here are the key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, create a safety bubble visualization with specific sensory details to use as a mental health tool in challenging situations. Practice activating your safety bubble daily, like waking up and before sleep, to make it easily accessible when needed. Number 2, healing isn't a one-size-fits-all. Explore nutrition and movement practices that light you up. Don't be afraid to keep trying until you find you fit. Number 3, challenge the stigma around trauma by recognizing it doesn't define your worth or potential for success. Number 4, remind yourself that your experiences are valid and normal, even when painful, as awareness is often the first step towards growth. And number 5, cultivate hope by connecting with others who have overcome similar challenges and found new ways forward. As always, thank you so much for watching and see you next time. Take care.